Hi everyone. Today I want to talk about the grade 4 slump, why kids with reading difficulties, they slip through the cracks, why it gets noticed so late. I talked about, a left brain delay or deficiency or underdevelopment, whatever you want to call it, on Tuesday. And today I just wanted to pop on to talk about why kids slip through, why kids struggle so much with reading difficulties. And one of the big reasons is that it gets picked up way too late. So it's known that dyslexia is detectable with 95% accuracy by age 5.5. So we don't have to wait until a child is drowning in reading in its full-on crisis in order to determine if they have dyslexia. Dyslexia is not defined by somebody who can't learn to read and is really far behind. Dyslexia can be diagnosed and determined by all kinds of other factors. I have that on my website. Reach out to me if you're wondering. Mixed dominance, trouble blending sounds, rhyming, all these factors can help to determine that. But I'm not going to talk about that today. What I want to talk about today is basically one of the frustrations I had as a teacher, and I know a lot of my teaching colleagues shared the same frustration. As a grade 7 and 8 teacher for many years, I found it really frustrating on grad night, believe it or not. All the kids are in their, lovely dresses and suits and they look so fancy and grown up. And then you're shaking their hand as they come across the stage, and how many of these kids have an IEP that was, maybe created in grade 1, 2, 3, 4, and they're still at the same reading level as the year that the IEP was created. So there's been no improvement or very little improvement. And I remember thinking, man, these kids are going into grade 9. They have 4 more years left, and they're reading so poorly that if this continues, they are not going to be able to make it in the real world. And what's really sad is what's frustrating about it is that for these kids, these reading difficulties were not new. They've been going on for some time. Unfortunately, grade 4 is the big year, right? The grade 4 slump, when kids are no longer learning to read, they're reading to learn. And this is when I tend to get calls from people reaching out, wanting to do the program, mom's in a panic, mom's in a crisis, child's in grade 4, and, it's now the school is saying your child needs to get tested. We really think there's something wrong, but the signs were all there. Even in grade 1 or 2, these kids or these parents and so forth and teachers would be saying, well, he's weak or he's behind with reading and so forth. But we just think he's weak and he's just behind and he just needs extra practice. And grade 4 is too late. What the research shows is that when a child gets diagnosed by grade 4, it takes years if we're using standard conventional approaches to address this reading difficulty and work with it and so forth. And so the other thing is, in connection to what I talked about on Tuesday, is that this also happens because these imbalances with the brain become more pronounced. So in grade 1 or 2, maybe the difference between the, weakness and the strength of the two different brain hemispheres is like this. And then maybe by grade 4, it's like this. So then everything is going to become exasperated and so forth. And so this is where kids start to get discouraged and motivation really starts to dwindle. These kids who are right-brained, who tend to be very happy-go-lucky, can only take so much of this repeated feelings of failure, no matter how hard they're trying, where they're just going to get into a mode where they just shut down. And again, that whole left brain is just continuing to fall behind as the right brain is continuing to overdevelop. So, also the other factor that's worth noting, 2 things. So grade 4, kids really tend to start to think and question more and their identity and how they fit in with their peer group and where they fit in, and start comparing themselves, and they see their peers doing well with reading and they see that they're struggling, and that's obviously going to create a lot of difficulties and so forth. And the other thing is that because the right brain is more emotionally developed than these kids, it's more developed in general. So they're going to be less motivated and maybe more affected emotionally by their feelings of failure because that right brain is overdeveloped. And so because it's based on feeling, they're more like they're not going to want to do something that makes them feel really bad because they're just very in touch with doing what feels right as opposed to this really logical side that the left brain is. And so, in terms of grade 4 and the lack of motivation and feeling like they're not fitting into their peer group and all of that type of stuff, or, this is where these kids will start coming home in grade 4 and say things like, I'm stupid, I'm dumb, I don't want to go to school, I hate school. And, mom goes into a panic, is totally worried. It's absolutely heartbreaking to hear or to see. And this can also result in discipline issues, right? Where they're either just shutting down, they're being defiant, they're acting like the class clown. They're just more concerned with their social life. And that's an obvious reaction. If they can't fit into their peer group, or if they can't feel like they can keep up with their peers on an academic level, then the next response is to try to fit in on a social level by kind of gaining some status socially by being the class clown or the, when we think of the class clown, we often think of the boy, but even with the girl, it could be that, or it could be just the social butterfly, whatever the one who's really popular, and that can then become their focus. That's what gives them a sense of identity and self-worth and so forth. So when the grade 4 hits, this is where we start getting a lot of kids getting the diagnosis. This is where, we start doing the things. And when I say the things, I'm talking about top-down approaches, which I've talked about before, right? The tutoring, the IEPs, the medication, the remedial reading programs, all of that stuff to help address the reading problem. But unfortunately, it doesn't really address the root cause. They are very much Band-Aid approaches. They are compensations. They are not corrective in terms of addressing the whether it's a left brain weakness or whatever the case may be. They're not addressing the weak connections or whether it's undernourishment and so forth. And so this is also potentially, like I've mentioned before, where these kids can be mistaken for having ADHD because they have poor focus suddenly in grade 4 because they can't keep up and they're more interested in talking with their friends because they might appear to be defiant or impulsive or hyperactive because of how it's affecting them in terms of their level of frustration or anxiety. It can look a lot like ADHD. And so this is where these kids might suddenly be medicated and get a wrong diagnosis. So I want to talk too about just that auditory processing piece, which I touched on Tuesday, and the left brain underdevelopment, because dyslexia is defined as a phonemic deficit, right? And that's very much connected to the auditory cortex, which is in the left side of the brain. And that's what a lot of these kids struggle with. So if there is a left brain delay, there's going to be issues with poor short-term memory, trouble blending sounds, segmenting words, following instructions. I was just talking to 2 different moms this week, and they were talking about how they can't get they give their child some instructions. By the time they get to the top of the stairs, they've forgotten what has been asked of them, right? That's typical. And so no wonder they have a difficult time following instructions in class. And it can look to the teachers or the parents like they're just choosing not to follow. They're not paying attention. They need to focus better and so forth. So auditory cortex, left side of the brain, and basically auditory processing disorder, phonemic awareness, that really tends to tie in quite a lot. And it's for this reason why it's not uncommon for children with dyslexia to have difficulty with music, rhyming, singing in key, challenges with rhythm. I know several dyslexics personally who have a really hard time. They couldn't care less about music. And I want to be clear, that's not hard and fast. Some totally love music, but it's more likely when there's an auditory issue for that to be the result is that they just don't have the same experience of sound and music and rhythm and all that type of stuff or rhyme that other people or kids do. And so the other aspect to this in terms of if this grade 4, in terms of tying into the grade 4 slump and what happens if we don't address it, is that it can really lead to mental health difficulties. And there's, again, 2 reasons for that. Obviously, the low self-esteem and low self-worth that occurs when a child, feels like they can't keep up with their peers, then they feel like they're dumb and they feel like they're stupid and all that type of stuff. Then you throw in the hormones, right? Puberty and all that. And these kids are just more vulnerable to depression with a right brain overdevelopment. That's a known thing. Right brain overdevelopment is like, that's also connected to bipolar, and please don't go down that, think that that's what it's going to mean or result in. But just to show that how much the right brain is associated with being emotional and the emotional center and so forth. And every mom I talk to, that the craziest, most interesting thing is, I always ask moms when they reach out, I say, like, what is your biggest concern? And aside from the obvious of, well, he, won't make a good living and so forth if he can't read, they'll say, I'm really concerned that how this is affecting his or her self-esteem, her self-worth, how she feels about herself. And it's so fascinating and even beautiful to me that moms understand the impact of what low self-esteem, how much that is going to impact so many other layers of their life. And so, I'm bringing this up because I think it's worth talking about and noting how much dyslexia, if it continues, and for a lot of people, is not just a reading difficulty, it's a mental health issue because of how much it impacts self-worth. Never mind the whole right brain overdevelopment and how that affects that emotional aspect, but just the self-worth piece and the feelings of constantly being defeated, not like everyone else, and different, and all of that type of stuff. And, it's for all of these reasons that I've talked about today and previously that I'm so passionate about early interventions. Don't take no for an answer. If someone tells you wait till grade 4, show them the research. It's all over. Reach out to me. I'll hook you up with the research that age 5.5 dyslexia, reading difficulties, can be diagnosed with a 95% accuracy. Just because the school doesn't want to test by grade 4 because of costs and protocol, and they don't want to do something until it's a crisis, don't let their protocols or their cost limitations limit your child. So we want to address the real problem, right, which is undernourishment, weak connections in the brain, and so forth, which is all the things I do in my 6-month program, the full potential formula. So if you found this helpful, do share. Let me know in the comments below what you're seeing with your child. Does any of this resonate in terms of how it's affecting their self-worth, the frustration of not being able to get the diagnosis when you know there's something wrong? And if you haven't grabbed my free starter kit, the Laser Focus Learner, grab that. I'll post the link for that in the comments below. And reach out if you want to book a free clarity call to learn more about the full potential formula and if it's right for your child and how it works and how it can help. So thanks for watching, everyone. Have a great weekend. Until next time.